The sun had barely risen when the trouble began, painting the highway in sheets of gold that did nothing to soften the danger building behind Arina Holt's truck. She had driven this route many times, miles of open road stretching across quiet fields, but today, the rumble of engines approached with an energy that felt wrong. In her mirror, a swarm of reckless bikers appeared, weaving side to side, closing in on her massive rig like wolves circling prey. Arina's hands tightened on the wheel. She was used to challenges, used to being underestimated, but something about the way they sped up, taunting her with revving engines, made her stomach twist. She whispered to herself to stay calm, unaware that what would unfold in the next hour would test not just her strength, but her past, her scars, and everything she had ever rebuilt. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us to stay human, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our W Insights. It truly helps keep these powerful stories alive. Arina wasn't just any truck driver, she was one of the very few female long haulers in her region. She had fought for every bit of respect she carried. Once a police canine trainer, she had left the force after a tragic accident stole her partner's life and shattered the future she thought she had. The weight of grief pushed her away from everything familiar until she found healing behind the wheel of a truck, with 2 retired police dogs, Rexo and Brutus, riding with her on every journey. They were more than just companions, they were lifelines, silent guardians who understood the language of pain and resilience. As the bikers surrounded her truck, one slapped the side of her rig so hard the metal shook. Another rode dangerously close, shouting words she couldn't make out but knew were meant to intimidate. Arina forced herself to breathe, focusing on the rhythm of the road even as fear crept into her chest. She tried accelerating, but they kept pace. When one biker swerved and blocked her lane, forcing her to brake hard, a deep tremor of dread moved through her. Rexo lifted his head from the passenger seat, ears raised, sensing the shift in her breathing. Brutus growled low from the sleeper cabin, a warning rumble like distant thunder. Just ahead was a rest stop, a small, dusty turnout with a lone vending machine and cracked pavement. Arina pulled in, hoping the bikers would continue on, but instead they followed, circling her like they owned the space. She climbed down slowly, her boots landing on the ground with a steadiness she didn't feel. The air smelled of burning rubber and stale dust. The bikers pulled off their helmets, revealing grinning faces filled with arrogance. One of them stepped forward, a tall man with sun-bleached hair and a sneer written deep into his features. His eyes traveled over her truck, then over her, dismissive. Arina kept her voice calm, asking them what they wanted. But they mocked her instead, laughing at her truck, at her being a woman driver, at her thinking she could tell them anything. Another biker kicked the step of her rig hard enough to rattle the windows. Something inside her snapped, not anger, but a flood of memories. Months of therapy. Years of carrying grief alone. Endless days of pretending she wasn't afraid anymore. She felt her breath growing uneven. Her vision trembled. Her palms went cold. She leaned against her truck, fighting the rising panic that threatened to break her completely. And that's when Rexo barked, a deep, commanding bark that cracked through the tension like lightning. The bikers looked up, startled. Arina steadied herself and opened the passenger door. The dogs didn't jump out. They didn't lunge. They simply stood at her sides when she stepped back, their posture calm but alert, waiting for her signal. These weren't ordinary pets, they moved like disciplined shadows of her past, trained to protect without escalating. The tall biker scoffed, stepping closer, calling the dogs toys. But there was a flicker in his eyes, uncertainty. Rexo locked his gaze onto the man's movements. Brutus leaned forward just enough to remind them all that one wrong step could change everything. Arina didn't want violence. She didn't want revenge. What she wanted was peace, safety, dignity. She gathered herself, feeling the weight of her breath slowly return, and told the bikers to step away from her truck and let her leave. One biker tried to reach toward her. Rexo instantly shifted, letting out another barking command that startled the group so badly they stumbled backward. Brutus followed with his own deep growl, low and authoritative. Their training was unmistakable, controlled, precise, frightening in its discipline. The men saw now that they weren't facing a helpless woman or pets they could scare. They were facing a former police trainer and her elite K9 guardians. The tall biker's grin faded. He lifted his hands, signaling the others to back off. They muttered curses under their breath, but they retreated to their bikes. Engines roared, dust swirled, and within moments the entire group sped away, leaving Arina standing in silence as the morning sun washed the scene with gentle light. When the last engine faded, her knees weakened. She knelt beside Rexo and Brutus, pulling them close, tears spilling freely, not of fear, but release. She had trained countless dogs, taught officers how to stand firm, yet she had forgotten how strong she still was. Her dogs reminded her. Life had bruised her, but it had not broken her. She whispered their names with gratitude, feeling a piece of her confidence return. The road ahead suddenly felt a little brighter, a little more possible. She climbed back into the truck, the dogs settling beside her, and drove on with the wind touching her face like a quiet reassurance. She wasn't alone, not anymore, not ever. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our W Insights. Your support truly keeps these meaningful stories going.